All right, so after decades of being, out in the scientific wilderness, psychedelics are making a huge comeback. And researchers are wrestling with this one massive question. How can a single experience with one of these substances lead to such profound, lasting psychological change? Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating theory that tries to crack that mystery.
The concrete coat had come off. Just let that sink in for a second. That's a quote from someone in a clinical trial for depression using psilocybin. I mean, it's such a powerful way to describe that feeling of release, right? Like breaking free from something heavy and rigid. But the real question is, what's actually happening in the brain to make someone feel that way?
And yeah, that's really the central question here. How can a single dose of something, given in the right setting, help a person break free from patterns of thinking that have been dug in for years, sometimes even decades? Well, to figure that out, we've got to first understand the problem these therapies are trying to solve. So let's talk about the brain when it gets stuck in a rut. In conditions like depression or addiction, it can feel like your mind is just caught in this endless loop, just replaying the same negative thoughts and behaviors over and over and over again. This visual is a really powerful way to think about it. Look at that system on the top right. It's become totally rigid, almost like a frozen lake. And when new information comes along, that little ball, it just thuds. It doesn't make a ripple. The whole system has become completely insensitive to change. Now, there's a scientific term for these deep-seated patterns. They're called priors. You can think of them as the brain's predictive models, right? They're all the shortcuts and assumptions it makes about the world. And usually, they're super helpful. But in some disorders, these beliefs get way too strong. They become overweighted, too rigid. A belief like, I am worthless, stops being a thought and starts feeling like a fundamental law of the universe, a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, so if the brain is stuck in this rigid, frozen state, how do you get it moving again? Well, you have to shake the system up, right? You need to introduce a little bit of chaos to break up those old, stuck patterns. And this is where a really cool analogy comes in from, of all places, metallurgy. It's called simulated annealing. See, to make metals stronger, you have to heat it way up. That makes it flexible, malleable. Then, as it cools down, it can settle into a brand new, stronger structure. The big idea here is that psychedelics might be doing something similar, acting like a kind of temporary heat for the mind. Which brings us to the absolute core of this new model. It's called REBUS, and it gets right down to what this heating process is actually doing on a biological level in the brain. What REBUS proposes is that psychedelics go right for the top. They target our most powerful, most abstract beliefs, our high-level priors. And we're not talking about simple predictions here. We're talking about the master stories we tell ourselves about who we are, our identity, our personality. In a way, we're talking about the biological basis of the ego itself. Okay, so look at how this works in a normal brain. It's a hierarchy, right? At the very top, you have those high-level beliefs, the ego, and they send these strong top-down predictions that filter and organize everything coming up from your senses. It's a super efficient way to make sense of the world and create a stable reality. But now, check out what happens under a psychedelic. That top-down control just relaxes. The whole hierarchy flattens out. And suddenly, you get this flood of bottom-up information. Memories, emotions, raw sensory data that's usually filtered out. It all comes rushing into your consciousness. The brain stops being a prediction machine and becomes an experience machine. And that right there is the REBUS model. The name is actually an acronym, and it's perfect. Relaxed beliefs under psychedelics. It's a really simple idea, but it has a ton of power to explain what's going on. So what does it actually feel like when that top-down control, that brain hierarchy, just temporarily dissolves? Well, that leads us to what some researchers call the anarchic brain. So we're back to this visual again, and you can really see the difference. Instead of that rigid, frozen system, the brain becomes more like a liquid surface. It's in this state of incredible sensitivity where just a tiny input, a piece of music, a stray thought, a memory, can create these huge, cascading ripples of change. Everything is fluid, dynamic, and hyper-connected. And what's so cool is that this anarchic brain model helps explain all those classic phenomena of the psychedelic trip. That feeling of ego dissolution, that's literally the feeling of your high-level beliefs dissolving. Those vivid memories and intense emotions, yup, that's all that bottom-up information flooding in, totally unfiltered. So,
Yeah, the brain gets temporarily disorganized. And that might sound kind of chaotic, maybe even scary, but that's precisely where the therapeutic potential lies. It's not just about the storm, it's about what happens after, as the system starts to cool down and put itself back together.
I mean, this side-by-side comparison just captures the entire theory perfectly. You go from that rigid, stuck system to a fluid, super flexible one. Psychedelics seem to open up this temporary window of incredible plasticity, giving the brain a rare chance to actually escape those deep, deep ruts of thought and behavior. And this is the therapeutic payoff. As the effects of the drug wear off, the brain begins to cool down and re-stabilize. But here's the key. It doesn't have to go back to the exact same rigid state it was in before. It now has the chance to settle into a new, healthier, more flexible state. That concrete coat can come off, and maybe, just maybe, stay off.
So, to really sum it all up, think of it like this. Normal thinking is super efficient, but it can get rigid. The psychedelic state temporarily trades all that efficiency for a massive dose of flexibility. You're shifting from a system that's built for predicting the world to one that's built for exploring it.
What a model like REBUS suggests is that maybe we're not just treating symptoms here. Maybe we're getting a chance to fundamentally change the underlying beliefs that cause so much suffering in the first place. And that leaves us with a really powerful final thought. If we can learn how to safely and effectively open up these windows of flexibility, what could that mean for the entire future of mental health?